broadening your knowledge of all things sports with interviews, analysis, and in-depth discussions. Getting a perspective you won't find anywhere else on sports you follow, play, or want to play from innovative and talented experts and enthusiasts from around the Alleghenies. This is Sports Desk, presented by Encompass Health Rehabilitation Hospital.
Welcome back to another edition of the Sports Desk around the Alleghenies. I'm referee Rich, and I have been waiting for this show for a long time. We probably planned this back in the spring, but now it's come to fruition. My guest this week is former NFL player Doug Plank. And Doug, I got to give your cousin Christy all the credit. She came to me in the spring, Christy Kimmel, who's a producer of Around the Alleghenies. She said, I have a relative who used to play for the Chicago Bears. Would you like to have him as a guest? And she said, it's Doug Plank. And I said, absolutely.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here. Like I said, we talked a little bit about, living in Pennsylvania, growing up there. Wow. I think it gave me the foundation of all my success on and off the field.
Well, Doug, being a Western Pennsylvania boy, and that was revealed to me back in the spring when we set all this up, that you were a Western Pennsylvania high school player. And boy, we have such a rich tradition of players and coaches coming out of Western Pennsylvania and gone on to great college careers and pro careers. How does it feel to be a part of that club?
Well, it's very humbling, actually. Not only, did I meet players that went on to great things in college and professional football, but, even like being with the Chicago Bears, you're never that far away from Western Pennsylvania, with our coach, Mike Ditka, for example. I mean, he was everybody's coach. I mean, he was dramatic and he was forceful. And there's no doubt in my mind that he was the reason that he took the Chicago Bears to the Super Bowl and won it. And it could not have been done without people like that from Pennsylvania.
So, Doug, playing in Western Pennsylvania and back in the day, and probably still to this day, that's just known as some tough football, some great kids, great coaches. Coming out of there, how did it prepare you for the next level?
I'll be honest with you. When I got to Ohio State, which was really, really a step up from high school, you have to expect the unexpected. The first day I get there, I had never played on AstroTurf in my life. And within 30 minutes, I managed, with the help of another player who actually had tackled me and, started rolling on the ground after with no uniform on, just helmets. We were just helmets and T-shirts and shorts. Mm-hmm. And this is the first day. And everybody's out there to show what they can do. So, I didn't really get a chance to play until my sophomore year. But I'll tell you what, that background from Western Pennsylvania, very hard-nosed football. I don't think I ever experienced anything the rest of my life, whether it would be in college or the NFL, that surprised me based on what I learned growing up as a young person in Western Pennsylvania and playing football.
But you wanted to go somewhere else for college, so I got to hear this story again.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, who doesn't live in Pennsylvania and want to go to Penn State? Nobody I knew.
That's true.
And I just kept thinking as I was going through Norwin High School, hopefully someone would show up and be interested in me. So, I mentioned to you, I started that writing campaign my senior year. Going into my senior year, I started writing letters to Joe Paterno, and I wrote him a letter for each game of that season. And I didn't hear anything. And I said, well, that was a great idea after the season was over. But lo and behold, 2 weeks go by, and it's in December. I'm not sure of the day now. I get called down to the office, and Joe Paterno is in the office at Norwin High School. And I'll tell you, I just thought this is the best day of my life. Not only meeting him, but I was anticipating he was going to offer me a scholarship. And I just said to Doug, we've recruited and targeted other players, but I just came by to thank you for those letters because they were very emotional and they were very honest. And I just told him exactly how I wanted to be, a Penn State Nittany Lion. And he said, they'd already recruited players, so he couldn't do anything for me, as far as a scholarship. But he said, is there anything else I can do for you? And I said, please, coach, if anybody asks you about me, could you just say that you had an interest in me? Not that you were going to recruit me, not that I was going to be a, Penn State Nittany Lion, just that you had interest in me. And I'll tell you what, the next week, there was an article in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and it said that, Joe Paterno was by Norwin High School and visiting Doug Plank, who he had a lot of interest in. And that was enough. That was enough to get this ball rolling. And the next week, Woody Hayes showed up at Norwin High School offering me a scholarship based on the article he had read in the paper about him, Joe Paterno, visiting me in Western Pennsylvania, my high school. And so I just tell people, hey, don't believe in never doubt yourself. There's always something out there. If you're positive and you're forward with something, then go ahead and execute the plan and see how it works. It worked out great for me.
So I'll bet you're just one of a handful of guys that can actually say Joe Paterno and Woody Hayes actually came to visit me at high school in person.
I think so. I honestly, to have both those coaches in one spot, it was an amazing thing. And, it just, I'm so thankful that I had a chance to play football and especially, as I went on in college and in the NFL, all of a sudden I had this reputation of being this bad guy because I would never stop.
One step and he gets a good lick by Ellis. Actually, Plank knocked Ellis into him. Then he picks up the ball.
I would play through it said, stop, don't stop until you hear the whistle. That was me. Right. I never stopped until I heard the whistle. That was taught to me way back when I was 8 years old. And that's the way I played all the way through my life. And, I say this, I think I put great effort into that sport, whether people liked the way I played or not. It was super aggressive. My first few years in the Chicago Bears, I think my first 3 years, I was the least penalized player on the team.
All right, Doug, I'll tell you what. Can you hold that thought and
Yes.
we'll come back and continue that right after the break. Back on the sports desk, our very special guest this week, Doug Plank, a Western Pennsylvania native and a Western Pennsylvania high school football player that got a visit from a couple of big-time coaches, ended up playing football at Ohio State, and that's where we were headed before the break. So, Doug, you made the transition to Ohio State under Woody Hayes. That was considered big-time football. So you played for a legend. You wanted to play for one legend. You ended up playing for another.
You know what, really, either one of those guys, man, I'll tell you what, it's like a dream world. Just waking up thinking, oh my gosh, if it would have been Penn State, like I said, that was number one. And, Ohio State, I didn't realize just how big it was until I got there. Those stadiums are so huge. I mean, you're playing in front of 2,000 and 3,000 people in high school. And all of a sudden you get into a stadium that has a capacity to hold 100,000 people. And, here's what really, really struck the deal for Ohio State. Number one, Joe Paterno wasn't going to recruit me. Okay. He's not going to sign me.
Okay.
That settles that. Two, I get to Ohio State. I can't believe it. There's like 20 guys on the team that are from Pennsylvania. And, all these other places I visited, they took you out to dinner, put you in a hotel. No, Ohio State put you in the dormitory. They stick you in the dormitory with another guy from Pennsylvania, Fred Pugich. I'm not sure which high school, he coached and played. And, but you know what? I'm thinking, listen, I can't go to Penn State, but I can go to Ohio State and have 20 guys on this team from Pennsylvania. It doesn't get any better than that.
Well, see, Woody Hayes thought he was out coaching. He was outsmarting Joe Paterno by getting all those Pennsylvania guys. That's what he was trying to do.
He was. And I mentioned the first day, not being on AstroTurf and hurting my knee, so then I get hurt. So I have surgery. So my freshman year is done. And I couldn't play anyway because the rules at that time, freshmen were not eligible to play, varsity football. So the next year, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to show them what I can do, how hard hitting I can do and all that. Well, unfortunately, they recruit a kid by the name of Tim Fox from Canton, Ohio, that played in the NFL for 12 years. He was a first-round draft pick of the New England Patriots. So you know what? He was fast. He was quick. He would make an interception and then run like 5 steps and then jump up in the air and do a complete flip and land on his feet and I couldn't do that. I could run over people, but I couldn't do a flip in the air. And, he was a great safety. I mean, I'll just say that. And we were winning games. We won 3 Big Ten championships, went to 3 Rose Bowls. What coach is going to say, listen, I want to change everything up? Just, if it's working, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And so basically, I was on the bench for 3 years watching Tim Fox play until my senior year. One of the other players, I was the next man up guy. I was that guy. And another player in our secondary got hurt, and that allowed me to go ahead and play a game in Evanston, Illinois against Northwestern. And a Chicago Bears scout was at the game. And I had the game of my life. I had interceptions, forced fumbles, fumble recoveries. I was doing it all. I was voted the Buckeye of the Week by our teammates. And my name went up on this big board in the locker room in the stadium. And it didn't matter, though. Whoever was in front of me was coming back the next week, and I was headed for the bench. So I really sat on the bench the rest of my time, rest of my senior year. Why would I ever think I was going to get recruited? I didn't. And lo and behold, day of the draft, 291st pick, 12th round, Chicago Bears picked Doug Plank. And well, I was in for the shock of my life, but you know what? I went there with that attitude, man. I'm not going to be denied. I'm going to give them everything Western Pennsylvania has taught me over the years.
All right, before we get to the NFL, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you this. Ohio State, Michigan, is it as intense as we all think it is, or as it seems to be?
I'll just say this: the game up there. I guess it was my junior year. That was a tie game, and it was one of those things that coming from Pennsylvania, I didn't have the history of this rivalry. So I learned it as I went. And when the coach starts giving you his presentation before the game, Woody Hayes. And he's breaking down himself, crying and tears. What do you think that's going to do to a team? I mean, we went crazy. And I remember running out onto the field, and University of Michigan had this ceremony each game where their alumni came by, their student part of it, with this big long sign. It was honoring the alumni from University of Michigan. Unfortunately, we were coming on the field at the same time. We literally ran over everybody on the field like a herd of buffalo. And you know what? These were civilians. And you can imagine how this went off. We were a herd of buffalo coming out, and nobody was going to stop us, including that sign, those students. And that's still being talked about to this day. No, it was, I can't, even coming from Pennsylvania, I learned quick. This is the real deal. And this is, I don't want to say life and death, but pretty close to it. And a very intense game. Maybe the Penn State game is kind of the same, but when you're still both in the same state, there's still a little bit of love for each other. When you're in Michigan and you're in Ohio, I'm sorry, it's off.
That's what rivalries are made of. Yeah, that's what rivalries are made of, and that's the way it should be. And when we come back in our final segment, we are going to talk with Doug about his professional days as a Chicago Bear right here on the Sports Desk. Don't miss it. Welcome back to the final segment of our Sports Desk show this week. We're talking with Doug Plank, and we graduated now to college, and now let's go to the NFL. And Doug, you basically gave us the scenario of how that one game where you were voted Buckeye of the Week got you noticed, and you end up being a draft pick of the Chicago Bears. So it just goes to prove that you never know who might be watching, right?
It sounds crazy, but I really I'm a walking example of that philosophy. You never know who might be watching you and what your opportunity is. And when that door opens, I promise you, I didn't walk through it. I ran through that door. When that person got hurt in front of me, that first series, I went into that game. I'm telling you, I was vibrating. And I was so energetic and just committed to playing as hard as I could. I would run back to the huddle. I would run off the field. I didn't walk anywhere. I mean, everything was full speed with me. And to be able to exert that, and I made all the kickoff tackles that day. I mean, they were going to get a special teams guy, a safety, an enthused individual that would be willing to do anything for the team. And, so when I got there, I'll be honest with you, where the Bears were at that time, which was not in a good position, and coming out of a team like Ohio State, where I'm competing against first-round draft picks, right. To me, it seemed easy. I mean, seriously, going into the National Football League, that was like, oh man, I could do this. And, I don't think they'd seen anybody hit like I did consistently. Maybe not as, I was only 200 pounds. So 200 pounds, you can't knock over 300 pounders, although I tried many times. But it was a great experience.
Well, Doug, I've always lived by the philosophy, and this will be a compliment to you, that the NFL teams nowadays, and even through the 70s and 80s, you find your better players probably after the third round. So you were drafted in the 12th round, and that makes you a long shot to make the team. But here you are. You made the team, and you made a career of it. So, again, you were one of those guys that were drafted after the second round, which I say the third round down is where you find a lot of your great football players for the NFL.
Yeah, you know what it is, too? Here's the other thing I found with the NFL. If you give a person too good of a contract, you may ruin that person as a player. Because now they're protected. They have income for life. I didn't have income for life. In my 8 or 9 years I played with the Chicago Bears, I averaged $45,000 a year. I made more money in the offseason working than I did playing for the Bears. So I never had this attitude of I was somebody great. I never did. I always worked hard. That blue collar mentality. My father worked all the time, 7 days a week, usually in factories down in Pittsburgh. And you know what? That was the mentality. And you weren't expecting anything, and nor did I. And I just felt like I gave them everything I had every single play.
From your days in the NFL, Doug, to today, I'm sure the game has evolved. It's changed. They have turf fields now. The games have become so specialized. How much has it changed in your eyes from the days when you played, when I still call it grass and dirt football?
Let's start with the tackling. The tackling has totally changed. Now it's almost like rugby football. You run alongside somebody and then you try to pull them down. There was a safety before I got to Ohio State, Jack Tatum. Whatever you think of him, he paralyzed other players. There were standards that we used to set for ourselves in terms of collisions and hits, whether it be on kickoffs or on defense. Those sort of things, all those things are called targeting today. Targeting. Right. You're going to get fined and you're going to get penalized, fined, and ejected. You won't be around for like a couple weeks. The things have changed so much. The use of the helmet, if you either hit somebody else's helmet or use your helmet as a weapon, which I did many times, you're not going to play. You're going to be kicked out of the league. And you're going to be, one of the really, really bad people they talk about for years afterwards.
Doug, we have a couple minutes to go. What would your advice be today to high school kids if you had a chance to talk to them? What would you say to high school football players today?
I would say, at the very least, make sure you get a scholarship or you get an education. If you're lucky enough to get a scholarship, don't screw it up. Don't flunk out. Don't, think it's all about sports. Because the academic part of it is so much more important, because there's a long life after your athletic career is over with. So, and you know what? And don't take anything for granted. I mean, always work hard. I used to work always in the off season. I did, heavy weightlifting, or I worked for my uncle on a garbage truck. Christy can tell you about that. I mean, that was hard work, but you know what? They were paying me to lift weights. I was lifting the garbage cans and emptying them. So, really, I mean, they were compensating me for working out. but, don't take anything for granted. And you know what? Always don't be surprised that one day it's a difference in your life. It's a difference maker. So that's why I always treated everything like this was the fourth quarter, the last minute of the game or whatever. I had to be on top of my game, doing the best I could, effort-wise, execution, and ultimately it paid off.
Well, from a guy who went from high school to college thanks to a visit from Joe Paterno, and then went from college to the pros because you had one super fantastic game in your career, and I'm sure you had more than that at Ohio State. You really made the most of it, and I want to thank you so very much for sharing that with us, and we could probably do another show with you.
No, I'd be happy to, because like I said, I think that, this is a story that needs to be told. Don't ever doubt yourself, have confidence. And when that opportunity comes along, don't walk, run to go get it. And be energetic. Right. I coached for 10 years.
I'm going to run to the finish, Doug. I'm going to run to the finish. That's it. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
We'll be right back. So there you have it, folks. I don't want to call it rags to riches because, Western Pennsylvania kids are always tough. And a lot of them, as we said, made it to the collegiate and pro ranks. And Doug Plank is a prime example of hard work. He said he didn't walk anywhere. He ran through everything. He ran through doors. He ran through defensive linemen, offensive linemen, anybody he could on the football field. And he made a success of himself. And the message he passes on to kids today, do everything at your level best and get out there and give it 100% because you never know who's watching. Until next week, here on the Sports Desk, play ball.